this week I have another guest for you. Now, I went through a whole period of not having guests on the show. And then I was like, actually, do you know what? There's two people I had in mind that I knew could bring something to the listener. And Anne Marie, a few weeks ago, was amazing. And you all give me a lovely feedback about things that resonated from her journey that you resonated with. And this guest, I think, will be exactly the same. This guest I asked on, in fact, I'm not even going to tell you, we'll go into it. Let me introduce Erin Turnbull to the podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, hello, hello.
So,
Excited to be here.
oh, do you know what? I'm so excited for this conversation. Background on Erin. Erin, I knew before she came into the academy. She is now a graduated Unbreakable mindset life coach, and she also has a full-time job. Tell me your title in your full-time job.
I am Executive Director for HR and Talent in my role, which is in a tech company over at Newcastle.
Amazing. So fabulous, fancy title there. Sounds fantastic. And the reason, oh God, I'm so speaking for you and I apologize. But I'll just quickly fill this bit in and then we'll go into the detail of it. Most people come into coaching because they've decided, you know what, one, I really want to help people, and two, I want a new career. Your reason was slightly different. You definitely wanted to help people, but it wasn't necessarily going to be the thing that was going to be your main income. So tell me a little bit about your journey into the academy and why you decided to gain your certification.
Yeah, so had the opportunity at work to drop down to 4 days, and I was sort of looking for a bit of a new challenge in terms of what I could do with that spare day. And I was super interested in coaching. Obviously, you and I had known each other from way back when you started out in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd sort of followed your journey and loved the stuff that you were doing on Instagram and things like that. And I saw the Unbreakable Mindset Academy, and I just thought, you know what, that is something that I could get my teeth into, could study towards it, maybe think about it as a bit of a side hustle, but more to the sense of I work in HR. I think there's loads of good stuff you can do around coaching and performance in HR. It was sort of two-pronged. It was actually, I want to do something great in my spare time, but also this is something I can use in my full-time job as well. So it's kind of two reasons for it.
Two reasons for it. And what happens when you come into the academy is that, and this is for every student, they come into the academy, they start to do the work as they're going through the coursework that you do on yourself. Because the whole point is that you're doing this work on yourself, so you get the transformation, so you understand how to give that to your future clients. And the other support that we give is that we give mentoring sessions. So you use your mentoring sessions as and when you need them. So one of the ones that you used was because something was coming up for you, right? Yeah. Tell me and the listener, well, tell the listeners, I know because I was there. What was it that was coming up for you as you were doing the work, going through it on yourself that you couldn't? It was almost, there was just a block and you didn't know how to get past it. Explain a little bit about that.
I think I had that mentoring session and we didn't talk about anything to do with coaching. We talked about like my work situation, and we talked a lot about imposter syndrome. And I think this is probably something that I've had throughout my whole career, you know, like back when you had a Saturday job in a newsagents and things like that. But I think in my current company, it got really strong in the sense that the people I work with, it's a tech company, they're super, super clever, yeah, highly intelligent people. And I just kept having this like awful feeling that I wasn't good enough. I didn't belong there. I wasn't worthy of working there. And I think I had that for such a long time. And I think the way I dealt with it was just to try and outrun those feelings by working harder or by being perfect or by learning more. And I just wasn't dealing with the feelings. I would sit in meetings and I would be like, I don't understand. And I would think like, oh my God, how am I going to contribute to this? And how am I going to sort of, how I don't want to look stupid. And I think that was really just like ruminating thoughts all the time. I'm really, really anxious about that. And I thought it wasn't holding me back. I was still sort of having promotions and moving up, but it was sort of other people pushing me to do that. It was never me kind of orchestrating that myself.
Because what was your, because it was a startup company that's grown,
Yes.
that you've grown
Yeah.
with. What
Yes,
was your,
absolutely.
because your title's Lush now. How
Yeah.
amazing to get to say that that's your title and that's what you do.
Yeah.
What was your first title within that company?
I was receptionist. I started off on reception.
So wait a
And
minute, let's just see the
yeah.
difference in the two titles. Receptionist, and what's your new title?
So executive director.
Executive director.
Yeah.
When you look at it from that point, you go, well, no wonder you had imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't, as you say, it wasn't you driving and thinking. You never sat at the reception when you first started and thought,
Yeah.
one day I'm gonna be
Absolutely
executive
not.
director Erin. That was never
No,
your
no.
goal. It was actually just you grew with the company. They
Mhm.
probably saw the potential in you that you didn't see, and they allowed you
Absolutely.
to grow. But what
Yeah.
happened was, totally putting words in your mouth, was you then got to the point where actually, I'm guessing the title didn't match what you thought about yourself.
And I think that's the awful thing about imposter syndrome. It's not only of those beliefs that you're not good enough and you're not worthy enough. And I know you've talked about not feeling clever enough and things like that. Like, not only are they there, but there's also this horrible, insidious feeling like that you're going to get found out,
That you don't
that
deserve a seat at
you
the table.
fooled everyone into believing that you're more competent than you are, and that actually one day they're going to realize and you're going to be publicly shamed and sacked and all of that. And I think, like I say, my response to that
But
was just
pause
to
for a
work
second,
hard.
right? That
Yeah,
that is debilitating. And that thought, everything
absolutely.
that you've
Yeah.
just said there, those can, it's almost like you were saying, you ignored it and you just
Mm-hmm.
carried on regardless, thinking, right, well, I just have to be perfect. I just have to be perfect. But that
Absolutely.
fear level of being
Mm-hmm.
found out, in your own words, the fear of being found out, publicly shamed,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
lose your job. Oh my God, you've got bills to pay. You're a single woman with her own place. You've got bills to pay. The pressure of having to perform at a certain level all the time just
Mm-hmm.
because you fear you won't be found out.
And I think, like I say, you're trying to just run faster than that. And to an extent that works because you are growing and developing, but you can't sustain that like
No,
that. You can't do that forever.
no. And
Which
I
is sort
think
of,
when you were going through the academy, it was almost shining a light on something you'd been
yeah,
ignoring for a long, because I wasn't
absolutely.
expecting that to come up for you because obviously I've known you before you came into the
Mm-hmm.
academy. My journey from afar was like, God, look at Erin, she's doing mint. God, love her. She started off receptionist. Look how amazing she's doing. How fantastic. And I used to see you post and things, and I followed the company as well because I'd done some
Yeah,
bits in the company, hadn't I? And I used to see you posing things, and I thought, oh God, it looks like such a great place to work. It looked really inclusive, and everyone was
mm-hmm.
friendly, and of course that was the case. But you were
Yeah,
still living with this anxiety that you'd almost put in a box, and it
mm-hmm.
was just simmering, and sometimes it'd bubble over.
Absolutely. It was sort of always there. And I think the time that I realized it was not normal was, I had moved up. I think I had maybe been promoted to HR director, not where I am now, but just slightly below. And I remember, rather than being proud of myself, I know I'd worked really hard to get it. Rather than being proud of myself, I was sort of making up outlandish conspiracy theories in my head as to why I'd got that promotion. No evidence of this whatsoever. Like, company had supported me and believed in me, but I was sort of thinking things like, oh my God, have I been promoted because maybe in 4 months' time they want to get rid of directors and that's why I've been promoted? And it was then that I thought, wow, stop.
Mhm,
This is crazy. Like, you've been promoted because you've worked hard.
mhm.
But this idea that I would come up with these outlandish reasons and like this, my brain was so suspicious as to why it happened that I just thought, things have got to change. But I think probably another couple of years after that, I was still running faster than it. And it wasn't until I did the Unbreakable Mindset Academy that I started to really think,
confront it.
this is...
And I remember your very words were, what do you do if somebody comes with imposter syndrome?
Mhm,
And I'm
mhm.
pretty sure my response was, it's one of the easiest things to overcome. It is, but not when you're stuck in it and you've lived with it for such a long time.
Mhm.
Now, can you remember why I said it was the easiest thing to overcome?
I think it was the way you sort of framed it to me was about getting out of your head. And there was a couple of things that you said that really, really resonated with me. The first one was about getting out of your head. And obviously, like we discussed, I would have been sitting in a meeting, I'd be thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to contribute? If I say something, will it sound stupid? What are people thinking of me? That was the sort of thing that was going in my head. And you sort of said to me, look, you're making this about you and you're not actually listening to what is going on around you. You're not giving people your full attention. So you're missing out on information. The first thing I did after that was when I would do that, I would just go into the meeting, take the pressure off myself to contribute and say anything and just listen to what was being said. And it's amazing if you trust that you just listen and give your attention to someone, of course you're going to know what to say next. Your contributions get so much stronger. And of course we discussed this in the sense of coaching as well. If you're a coach and somebody comes to you and they're telling you something so personal and you're sitting there thinking, I wonder what they think of me, or I wonder what I'm going to ask next, or how am I going to help them? You're not giving them your attention. So just to
How
be
could you
able...
respond in the right way anyway?
Exactly.
You'll sabotage yourself.
Mm-hmm. Just understanding that, take the pressure off yourself to say something, take that away and just listen to what is being said. And I just think that is so simple, isn't it? But it's so effective because then you're hearing everything, you're understanding it, you're able to ask questions, and then it just flows after that.
100%. And the reason why I know, and anyone who's listening who struggles with imposter syndrome, I say this with love, but it's because the techniques are so simple that to overcome imposter syndrome is really simple. And the reason being is because the thing that's causing imposter syndrome is emotion. And goal is always, God, I just want to be good at my job. Now, to be good at a job, it doesn't matter what it is. There are practical ways in which you can be good at your job, right? So there's probably like, oh God, I don't know. If you were a nail technician and you were a bit nervous every time you did nails, you'd probably be a bit rubbish and you wouldn't be painting straight or whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not the worry. Sorry, the worry's the thing that's causing you to shake, but actually the thing that you need to get better at is painting straight. So being able to practice on someone who doesn't care, I don't know, your mom, your sister, your best friend, whatever, practice on someone until you get confident that actually you can paint straight, that you can then be confident that you could then deliver that. And that's the same in any industry or any job role. It is getting to a point where you go, right, well, what's the bit that I'm not good at? You're like, there's two things that you can do. Is one is going, right, well, hang on a minute. My fear is I'm shit at my job. My goal is I want to be amazing at my job and deserve the seat that I've got at the table. You start to understand one, which is what you said, where you sabotage yourself. How do I remove that fear? Your fear was being in a meeting and worrying that either you'd get asked a question that you felt you couldn't answer or that you'd say something and look stupid. Your sabotaging behavior was to go into that meeting and worry about all of those things. So therefore you couldn't concentrate on what was being said. Because you were working with the fear, you got a bad outcome. And luckily for you, and most people do this, they manage to skirt around it. You might not be the best person in the meeting, but they get themselves through it painfully. But actually, if you were focused on your end goal, which could be, how do I show up in a meeting with confidence? How do I show up and know what I'm talking about? And there's three things that you have to do. One, prepare, right? People forget because they think, oh God, I've got a meeting in 20 minutes. And oh God, I'm so worried about it. And what they forget to do is go, wait a minute, what's this meeting about? Do I have everything that I need to have? Am I more than prepared? And this is something we say to the students in the academy. For every session you go into with your client, be over prepared. You don't know what's going to come up, so you prepare for things you don't know. It's the same with a meeting with work. You over prepare and have all of that information at hand. That's one. Number two, you listen intently. Exactly what you said. Stop focusing on you. That's your ego, isn't it, showing up? You're focused on you. But actually, if you start listening, I love that you said that because I totally forgot about that. If you start listening to what's being said, you can actually have a seat at the table and have an opinion, because it's not that you don't know it. It's not that anything's being said. It might be, I don't know, that you work in HR, but they're talking about finance. Well, that's fine. Do you need to know about the finance? No, you probably don't. You probably don't need to have an opinion on that, because that would be really weird. Why are you having an opinion on something that's not in your department? So almost allowing that vulnerability to go, well, that's not my area, that I don't know it because it's not my area of expertise. What do I need to know about that department that would help my area of expertise is probably all you need to think about. And thirdly, just recognizing that, you know what, if you don't have the answer, you're not going to get shot down.
No, I know. And I think as well, I think listening and questions are your superpower when it comes to imposter syndrome, because I think when you feel like that, asking a question is terrifying because you think that is going to reveal how little you.
Wow.
I think, and obviously we talk so much about reframing things and flipping it around, but if you take someone aside after a meeting and say, can I just pick your brains for 10 minutes on this because you seem to know loads about it and I just want to learn a bit more. Like, if someone said that to me, I'd be delighted that they'd realize that I have this knowledge. Actually, no one's judging you if you ask a question. People want to share their knowledge with you. Just being able to say, actually, if I ask a question, that's a great thing. People are going to appreciate that I've recognized that they've got the knowledge that I've got, I want to need. I need. So
100%. Didn't even think of that, of course. And I guess one of the things that I would say is the second thing that you need to do with imposter syndrome, and again, why it's so easy to overcome, is that you start to look at, right, well, one was the sabotage. You knew you would sabotage in a meeting because you'd be overthinking. Two, questioning, taking the emotion out of it, exactly what you said, and question my thoughts, right, hang on. My fear is I'm not good at my job. Let's actually look at where I am good. Like, where do I absolutely tick all the boxes? And fingers crossed, not in every job, and your company is a small company, but for most places they will have a job description. And if they don't, you could Google one online for your title, and then you start to work out, right, well, actually, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do that. Oh God, I don't do that. I don't know how to do that. I normally avoid that. Whatever that thing is, well, that's your development area. How amazing. You've just figured out the area that you need to work on. I know that my area in my old job was the figure sheets that the stores used to have. I used to die inside sometimes when I first started with the company, because a lot of numbers in one go at me is too much for me to take in. For me, I know I need time, and every company's different with how they produce their figure sheets and things like that. I know I need time to understand what every column says. I don't know if that's my dyslexia. I don't know if that's just the way that I learn. What I would normally do, Erin, was my go-to was go, well, let's just ignore this for a while. And let's just hope for the best, that I'll just ask the right questions and they'll tell me the answer. I would go into a store and say, tell me how trousers has been performing for you this season. They could have been totally bullshitting me on how the trousers have been performing, because I probably wasn't looking at the figures anyway. But there was still that fear, although there was a way around it for me, and I had a workaround because I would just ask them because I didn't understand it. There was still that fear of somebody's going to ask me something about that sheet, and I'm going to read. They're going to know I don't know how to read that. And sometimes I'd be a year in. It's somewhere that I'd worked, and I hadn't actually looked at the figure sheet to understand how it all worked. When I realized that, probably 3 companies in, That was the thing that I went to first. And I made sure that not only was I looking at it, but I had access to it. So I could print them off before I went to stores. So I had time to absorb that because that was an area that took me longer than it would someone else. And that's okay because that's my level.
Yeah.
I'm amazing at some things and I've got a great creative imagination. I can see things maybe where other people can't. But from a detailed numbers point of view, I need it to be as simple as possible. But I can't change how they set that up. Therefore, I've got to figure out what is going to be my best way to understand this information in the quickest amount of time. Well, to start off with, it had to be that I printed them off at home and I would revise them the night before and I would make notes and scribble all over them. So when I got a store, I knew what I was talking about. It wasn't me flying by the seat of my pants. I actually knew what I was talking about. That sounds very similar to what you're saying, is that actually you figure out, you kind of acknowledge, oh, that's an area I don't know enough about. I'm going to be brave enough to go, could you teach me? And how amazing is that, that you get to that point where you're comfortable enough to allow vulnerability. The amazing Brené Brown does a lot of work on this, allowing vulnerability to grow. Like, you're not going to grow if you're not looking at where you need to develop. And it's like looking at those areas, right? Where do I sabotage and what are my development areas? If you're working on those, there's no emotion attached to those. It's fact. You can then start to include that in your week of going, right, well, actually, I know my development area is X, and this is what I'm going to work on. Tell me then, sorry, I've been talking for way too long. Tell me then, you went away after that session, you started to work. I don't really remember to you much about work until you then told me what had happened at a later date, which was amazing, which we'll come on to. Tell me what you started to do differently based with that knowledge.
There was a couple of things, but the first one was, if I was feeling those sorts of imposter thoughts, like I say, for me, it was mostly in meetings, but other people, it might be like in one-to-one sessions or talking to clients. And there was something that I didn't know. And there might have been something, like you say, it might have been something technical that I was never, ever going to understand. But I was stopping myself. The thought I would be having was, I don't know this. But because I knew from coaching and from the academy what my limiting beliefs were, I would try and slow down my thoughts so much that actually when I had that thought, I don't understand, I wouldn't allow that to become, and that means I'm shit at my job.
Wow.
Because it does. You jump straight from, I don't understand, to, I'm not good enough, I'm shit at this, I can't do this. What I would do is just try and insert a thought in between that. So I don't understand, how can I understand this? And as I say, that might be asking a question, that might be pulling someone aside after the meeting, and it might be researching or something like that. But it was just, just being, once you're conscious of what your limiting beliefs are, and also a tool that I love the most from the academy, and I keep banging on about it all the time, is the reticular activating system. Once you know that is happening, you know that your brain is looking for things that confirm your belief. If I had that belief, I'm not good enough, I'm looking in the meeting at people's faces to say, is there anything that indicates that they think I'm not good enough there? It doesn't matter what they're saying. My brain's not looking for things that contradict the belief. It's looking for things that confirm that belief. I think when you know that, and you can sort of see it happen. I've got a good example actually of this happened to me. So I have a belief, I'm not a great speaker, I'm not articulate enough.
Everyone listening to this podcast is going to disagree. But
that was the belief that I had. But obviously with work, in the role that I have to do quite a lot of presentations. And I was in the middle of a presentation, and content was good, I was in full flow, and I happened to look at someone who was just sitting right in front of us. And this poor guy, he looked at me and he just looked away really quickly. And immediately I felt my brain saying, he's looking away because you're not doing a good job at this and he's embarrassed for you. And you poor guy, he was probably scratching his foot or something like that. But that just showed me that teeny tiny thing was trying to confirm that belief that I'm not a good speaker. And it didn't matter that other people were nodding along and other people would say, oh, you did a good job there. That was gone. It was just that one thing that I was picking up on. And look at where you are making things mean something.
Yeah.
And I was making that mean that I wasn't good enough, but actually it was nothing. It was the flimsiest of evidence.
And also, to be fair, I've got two examples of, this is not true, but I've got two examples of why that wouldn't have been true. One, if I'm sitting somewhere and there's a speaker, if they look at me when they're talking, I'm paralyzed in the chair. I think, stop looking at us. I want to listen to you, but don't look at us. Don't look at us. It could have been that. Once a girl, I remember when I worked for Debenhams years ago, and it was before the store opened, so we did a massive recruitment drive. So we had to do a ton of training. It wasn't just one person, it was like 30 people in a room. You were having to train them on everything from the ground up. And we were all taking it in turns to do this training. And I delivered training, and this girl, no word of a lie, fell asleep, right? and look, to be fair, the training that we're delivering, I was helping the stores out. It wasn't in my area of expertise. I wasn't that arsed, if I'm honest. It was probably boring anyway, but I did pull her to one side and I said, oh, are you all right? I didn't say I noticed you were asleep in the training. I can't remember what I said, but I said, oh, are you all right? Did you enjoy the... Actually, I don't think I would have said you enjoyed the training. I can't remember, but I remember going up to her and she said, oh, do you know what? I'm struggling today because my little girl had us up all night. And she was only young herself. Like, she must have been, God love her, 18 or something. And now, what have I just found out? One, she's struggling. She's got a little girl who was keeping her up all night. This is a part-time job to help clothe her daughter. This isn't her career aspirations to be working at bloody Debenhams. Like, her goal is just to make sure her daughter's all right. And I found so much out in that conversation, because actually I just said, oh, you're all right, how you doing? I think I said, oh, you're enjoying the training, maybe, I don't know. And then she opened up and I was like, oh, good, I'm not a boring trainer, was the thing that confirmed in my head. At least it's not me. It was her daughter that kept her up. Amazing. You said, I've totally gone off track there. You said the thing that you started to put in place was stop and looking for evidence.
And I think with your beliefs, and I think when you've identified what your limiting beliefs are, for me, it was, if let's use the one about not being a good speaker, it's not, I couldn't go from, I don't feel like I'm a good speaker, to saying I'm a fantastic speaker, I'm ready for my TED talk. I couldn't make that leap from that to that in terms of that belief. But I can go in the middle of that and say, I'm more confident, I'm improving. I keep putting myself in these situations where I can get more experience with it. So if that's what I believe now, then my brain's looking for evidence that, oh yeah,
she's better,
more confident, and actually it's a lot better now. So I think your belief doesn't have to leap to something super, super positive. It can go in that sort of middle ground.
Starts to go in the right direction.
Exactly.
Tell me then, because this is one of the reasons why I got you on, because you didn't just overcome imposter syndrome. And overcoming imposter syndrome at that point would have been just realizing that you were good enough at that job. Did you realize when you started to do the work on your imposter syndrome?
I think it was, you say, realizing that you're good enough at the job. And I think when I did this, and obviously going through that first section of the academy is like a massive personal transformation for anybody that's doing it. Before you've even started to think about coaching, you're just changing so much about yourself. But when I did the work, I think that feeling of being found out all but disappeared, to be honest. That feeling of, oh my God, someone's going to realize one day, that just left. And I think I just got that confidence to say, actually, I am good at this. And like you said, these are the things I'm good at. There's other things that I need to develop at, but these are the things I'm good at. And I've been with this company 14 years and I've grown and I've worked hard. But I think I accepted not only the sort of the role that I was in and that I was good at that, but I was also then thinking, I'm ready for my next step as well. There was positions that were being created, which was sort of between my role and sort of your C-level executives. And I knew that some people were going to move up into those positions. And I was just ready to say, you know what, I think I'm ready for this as well. And the response was, we think so too. It kind of just came full circle there, that actually.
So was that the first time that you'd actually went for a promotion of your own accord rather than being told to go for it?
I think definitely, I think I'm so lucky to work in like such a supportive company, but promotions before had just been like, you're ready for the next step. We're gonna move you up to this level. But I think it was sort of that feeling that I'm ready for this. And it's been really straightforward since then, because you've done all that work. You can implement those tools. And those beliefs, I think every time you start something new, the belief tries to pop up again. But because you're so conscious of it, you can see what's happening. You can go, oh, I can see there's that belief that I'm not good enough, but you know what? Here's the evidence that I am.
And also that there's a point of, and this is why sometimes clients will bounce back to me when they start something new, because we do the work on them, they feel amazing. And you know that there's one lady in particular, she still listens to the podcast, she knows who she is. And we did the work and she was feeling amazing afterwards, and knowing that actually it wasn't her that wasn't good enough, it was actually where she was working probably wasn't right for her. While we were working together, she ended up applying for another job, and then a few months later she came back because all of that stuff came up again. And she just needed somebody to help her look at it from a practical point of view. And I think it took one session or something just to correct that thought pattern, because you're right, it does want to come up again, because actually what happens is you feeling like you're not good enough for a role. Well, you're not when you first start out, because you don't know what you need to know. It's like anything you start from the first time, I always think you'll be shit at because you've never done before. Presuming that you're gonna finish a role where you were achieving all expectations, if not exceeding all expectations, to then go into your next role, you're not going to be at that level anymore, because you've got to learn everything you didn't need, everything that you don't know you need to know, as well as everything that you know you need to know. And there's going to be stuff coming up where you're like, shit, I dropped the ball on that. I didn't know that was expected of me to do that. And I used to say to anyone that came to work for me years ago when I worked in retail, it's going to take you a year. But just imagine you're a new person for a year, because actually there's loads of things that you're not going to know until you know it. I don't know, for us, it was like preparing for, oh God, I've got in the head, like some store specific, right? This was so much and so specific. And you would only know it if you'd gone through a full cycle of retail. Some areas of where we worked had a high Asian community. So therefore, there were certain things that we needed to do in those stores to prepare for Ramadan or something like that, where the things that we would sell would be completely different in that time. But you wouldn't know that until you've done a full year in your area. And it's like, when you're doing anything for the first time, you've got to give yourself a window of going, do you know what? It's fine that I don't know it, but I know I'm going to figure it out. And you don't beat yourself up in that first year of cycle. And sometimes it's a bit longer. Sometimes it can be an 18-month cycle.
I think I think the thing is, it's okay to be a beginner. It's okay not to know stuff. And I think another tool from the academy is the 4 stages of competence, which is that whole cycle. You don't know what you don't know. You don't even know how much you need to learn. And then that second horrible stage where you're aware of how far away you are from.
I realize there's so much to learn. It's almost like that's probably where people get to in the academy at module 1, like the start, and the thing that gets you going with a goal is excitement, passion, like, oh, this is exciting. And then you go, oh God, there's so much that I didn't realize I needed to know. And then you feel like it confirms all your limited beliefs. I'm never going to get there. I'm never going to get there. And that's probably that second stage, not in the academy, but in most people's goals where they give up.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's
the
like
breeding ground for imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and I think when you're in a company, you can't give up, because you've got to keep going, and eventually it's a slogfest and you get through. Like, you have all the time, but it's been a difficult process for you internally, and now you don't have to have that internal struggle, because you just get to go, well, that's okay, I'll learn it.
It's
Amazing.
trusting yourself, isn't it? And being able to say the beliefs will come up, but we'll be able to
Mhm.
deal with it when they do.
How does it feel landing that title? Because that's a proper grown-up title, Erin, isn't it? How does
It
it
is,
feel when
yeah.
somebody says, "What do you do?" and you land that title?
You know what? For probably about this is the first few weeks, I wouldn't say it. I would just say, "Oh, I'm HR director."
Mhm.
Um, but now I'm getting better at saying
Oh,
executive director. But
how
so
amazing. How amazing. Huge congratulations.
thank you.
I'm buzzing and thank you so much for coming on the podcast because that conversation is so helpful. And I could have that on my own, but it's so relevant when you can see it from someone else's
Mm,
journey, from literally going, these were the thoughts I was having, but now this is the thoughts that I now do have that serve me. And
mhm,
it's so empowering to hear that because there will be people who've got no desire to become a coach that listen to my podcast and
mhm.
are feeling that in their journey now, wherever they're at, and it's debilitating, and
Yeah.
yet they're showing up like they've got their shit together, but actually inside the little legs are under the water, panicking,
Yeah.
panicking, panicking like a little duck, away flapping away, just hoping that they'll stay with the head above water.
Mhm.
And it doesn't need to be that hard, does
No,
it?
no. Actually, we did a workshop at work at the end of last year, which was about coaching, and we touched on imposter syndrome there. I think there was about 30 people there, and that was made up of C-level executives. It was made up of juniors, and I sort of said, could you put your hand up if you've ever suffered from this? And everybody in the room put their hand up.
Oh, I
And I
love
just
that.
thought, you know what? Nobody is the only person going through this. But
Yeah.
I now feel like what a privilege I have in that not only have you got a safe space in coaching to talk
Uh-huh.
about this, but I can now make that workspace, that safe
Yes.
space for people to be vulnerable. And you know
Mhm.
what? There are no stupid questions. Ask the question. It's a total privilege, but I feel like I owe a big debt to you for that
Oh, get
because you
out.
taught me through it.
No, and honestly, I will cry. The thing is, right, when people come and do the work with me, oh God, honestly, I'm not going to shove away that compliment. I love it. And thank you so much because I, I got into coaching because I'd felt the pain and I got out the other side of it thinking, God, I don't have to live like that. What happens if I could do
Yeah.
that for one person? Do you know what? I'm going to take what you just said then. I'm going to let it wash over us and I'm going to really take it with the appreciation that it deserves. But what I will say is that you had to do the work as well. Yes, I was helping you to correct your thought patterns, but you had to go out there
Yeah.
and do the work. And that's the bit that is the hardest bit. But for every client, for every student, it's like knowing that actually that is the hard bit, but it's way easier than staying where I am now.
Exactly.
And I love the fact that you now get to do that for your teams and for people in
Mhm.
your company as well. And allowing that door to be open to vulnerability and for people to
Mhm.
be able to share it. And I hope, God, I hope everyone's listening who works with you and gets to hear this journey because they probably didn't see that in you when they
Oh
first
no.
started working with you. And how amazing that you get to be that honest to go. I was. I
Mhm.
did question myself every time. And
Yeah.
people would have, I bet there was at least one person in that room thinking, God, I wish I could be more like Erin, but didn't know that you were struggling at that point. Yeah,
No.
because maybe they were struggling and you didn't notice them because you were struggling, but they were
Yeah.
probably quieter than you and thinking, well, Erin looks like she's got her shit together. You know what I mean? Because you
Yeah,
probably did hold
totally.
it together as much
Yeah.
as you could. Whereas now it comes from an authentic place. Did people notice a difference in you? Or do you think you just hit it so well?
I think definitely there is a difference. I think particularly around that sort of contributing at a higher level, there's definitely a difference. And just, just not being afraid to say, like, can I check my understanding of this? And
Yeah.
like just simple things. I think
Mhm.
Anne-Marie was saying last week, it is just the simple things that are the most effective. I think I was looking for some sort of complex academic scientific thing that was going to change it, but it wasn't. It was just thoughts and
Uh-huh.
slowing things down.
And that's why, God, there's an episode I talked about this a few months ago where we make the brain way more complicated than it is.
Mhm.
And it's just us getting in our own way. It's as simple
Yeah.
as that. The only thing that's ever sabotaging us is our thoughts about it. And we can change our thoughts. but we don't think we have the power to because somebody didn't tell us it was possible. And there wasn't a rule book on it, and you're not taught it in school. Imagine if this was taught in school. How amazing would our economy be? How amazing would our health system be if people were able to realize that they can get out of their own way, they can achieve whatever they want in the world, and it doesn't have to be a slogfest to the end. And how amazing that you get to do this and you get to do the coaching work as well. I know that you have an amazing, now you're going to have to tell me more about this so that people can follow you exactly what it does, because I'm not a face to it because I'm not a reader, unfortunately, because of my dyslexia, I'm a listener. But you've got an amazing Substack. Tell people about this and how they can follow you, because you're beautiful, as well as good as you've been on here and well spoken and articulate about what you struggled with. The way you write it is beautiful. I would read it the way you write it. It's beautiful. Tell me a little bit about what it is you do and how people can find that information.
It's on Substack, and if you don't know Substack, it's basically like a writing platform. And my Substack is called It's the Climb, which is based on a Miley Cyrus song.
I was hoping it was.
We all hope that, didn't we? But it's called It's a Climb, and basically I do an article every other week. Sometimes it's every week when I've got a lot to say, but it is around all these topics. It's imposter syndrome, it's self-worth, it's learning to trust yourself.
What's the last one you did? What was the last title?
So the last one was on validation, internal and external validation, which all links in really what we've just been talking about as well. But have a look at it, because you can subscribe.
Right, imagine I'm an old person, right, who doesn't even know what a podcast is. I'm the same with Substack. Is it like I just Google Substack and then I would go to a search bit? Like somebody would go onto a podcast app and search Unbreakable Mindset. I'm going onto something called Substack and I'm looking for It's a Climb.
Erin Turnbull, It's the Climb.
Amazing. But you know what? We'll make it even easier. I'm sure there must be a link that I can add on. And
yes, let's do that.
For me.
Yeah.
Amazing. Anything else that you want to add?
No, just to say, obviously, the coaching work that you do and the academy, if anybody's sitting thinking about it and wondering whether they want to do it, go all in, because for me, for the personal transformation alone has been well worth it. But also then you've got actually that ability to coach others as well.
Pass it on. Amazing. Oh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it.